Hey everyone, welcome to Movie Rex. I'm Megan, and today I'm going to be looking at 10 of the most disturbing movies I have been able to sit through. Now, this idea came to me when I did my short the other day on Ari Aster's new movie, Beau is Afraid. In it, I mentioned that apparently it's Ari Aster's most disturbing movie yet, which says a lot because he did Hereditary and Midsommar. But anyway, I did that and thought it would be fun to kind of go over some of the most disturbing movies I've been able to sit through. Now, I do have a threshold on what I'm willing to watch. So movies like Serbian film, not on here. I won't watch it. Cannibal Holocaust, won't watch it. So don't expect that on here. Anyway, with that being said, let's get into it. First up, The Human Centipede, 2009. A sadistic doctor who specializes in separating Siamese twins performs a surgery on 3 people to make them look like a centipede. So I remember being at work and hearing about this one, and when it was described to me, I was like, what the fuck are they talking about? But, you know, curiosity got the best of me. I had to watch it. It's kind of how movies like this spread, if you ask me. I mean, it's just that element of like, ooh, that sounds so weird. I got to see that for myself. So the whole thing with this is that these 3 people basically get turned into a human centipede. The doctor wants them to also have one connected gastric system. So the front of the centipede, the middle of the centipede, and the end of the centipede, all human, all connected. And the big scene, I think, that kind of like created the most shock was when the front of the centipede is given food and in it is a laxative. Then, you know, I'm going to leave that up to your imagination if you haven't seen this one, but yeah, it's pretty gross. So it's definitely a disturbing movie. I wouldn't recommend it. I would talk about it at parties, but you know, that's again, how these kind of movies get spread. People hear about it, they got to see it for themselves. So, all right, next up, and keeping with the same kind of body horror, Tusk from 2014. An egotistical podcaster named Wallace travels to Canada to interview a mysterious hermit named Howard. He discovers the subject of his interview has a very disturbing fascination with walruses, and that his being there is all part of his nefarious plan. So I'm just going to say, I hated this movie. I hated it. I do not like it at all. I watched it because it had Justin Long in it, because it was written and directed by Kevin Smith. But other than that, if I had just heard about this movie and the plot was a man's obsessed with a walrus and he turns another person into a walrus so that he can relive some moment, I probably wouldn't have watched it. But because it's Kevin Smith, because Justin Long, you know, I went ahead and I sat through it, but no, I'm not a fan. You know, Justin Long gets turned into this disgusting human walrus thing. He even sounds like a walrus. It is so uncomfortable. Granted, they all did a really good job. I mean, they were very convincing. Maybe that's also why it was so uncomfortable to watch and so disturbing, because you felt like it was real. But I mean, as real as it could be that somebody actually gets turned into a walrus. But anyway, I don't know. I didn't like it. It was very uncomfortable, but I sat through it. I wouldn't do it again. So, all right, next up, Audition. A widower in search of a new wife is convinced by his friend to hold an audition, under the guise that it is for a new movie where he can meet several women and decide on which one to take out. Unfortunately, the woman he picks is not who she appears to be. So a long time ago, I had watched something called 100 Scariest Movie Moments. I actually rewatched that on YouTube like around every Halloween. My goal is to watch every single movie from that list, which I've pretty much done. Some are hard to find, but anyway, a scene from this movie was on that list, and that's what sparked my interest in it. So there's a lot of disturbing moments in this movie. The whole thing is that this woman is basically a psycho, and there's this scene where she's sitting next to a phone, and you know that she's just waiting for this call back. And there's this bag sitting next to her. All of a sudden the phone rings and the bag just starts thrashing around, and you're just like, what is that? You know, like, what is in there? So it turns out to be this man that's like had like, I think fingers cut off. I think his tongue's cut out. He's just like brutalized. And then like there's a scene where she feeds him, and she does that by like vomiting into a bowl, and he just like laps it up like a dog. I mean, it's really, really disturbing. It's really, really weird. Again, this is a Japanese horror film, so I feel like Japanese horror just takes things to like a different level than what American horror is able to do, because it's the imagery, it's the acting, it's the story, they are just able to push boundaries. So at the end of the movie, where it all comes to a climax, she's basically attacking the man that held the audition, but she does it in like this gleeful way where she uses like a wire, like a piano wire or something, to sever his limbs. And the whole time she's doing it, she's sort of like singing. It's really, really creepy, very disturbing. In the 100 Scariest Movie Moments, can't remember what the guy's name is, the one who directed and wrote American Werewolf in London, he even said that this movie was so disturbing, he didn't like it. So, I mean, I think it has a really great plot. I think it has a really great story. I mean, for horror, it's good. But yeah, I can't say that I liked it. I mean, honestly, I don't know if there's like a movie on my list that I'm like, oh, I really like that one. But again, sat through it, so. Next on my list, 2005's Hostel. 3 backpackers eagerly go to Slavic City as part of their pleasure-seeking vacation. However, what awaits them there is more terrifying than any of them could have imagined. So I saw this one in theaters, and I remember like having to like look away through most of it because the scenes with the torture is really kind of unbearable. I mean, it's really gross to watch. Saw it again a few years later, and what kind of struck me was the idea that when you're watching the torture scenes, you know, you're turning away. But then when Paxton escapes and goes after the men that torture them, you're like cheering him on. You're like, yeah, get him, and all that stuff. So I don't know. It's very strange how all of a sudden the disgust of violence can go to cheering it on. I don't know. Just very weird. Anyway, that's what kind of stood out to me on that one. So, all right, next on my list, House of a Thousand Corpses, 2003. 2 couples are traveling through Texas on a search for urban legends about murderers. So I get that for today's standards, House of a Thousand Corpses isn't really that bad, but when I first watched it, and my husband had the same reaction, he told me, it just felt dirty. Like you wanted a shower when you were done watching it. It was just really like, I don't know, just like a gross, dirty feeling. So I think what makes this one so disturbing, obviously it has elements of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think the whole movie kind of pays homage to movies like that. But it was just like really weird scenes, like the scene where they're all sitting at a table and they have masks on, or when Baby Firefly does her little song and dance, or making people run away while they're wearing bunny costumes. I mean, just really weird things about this movie, and the fact that it didn't really end on a very happy note. I mean, you find out that Captain Spaulding is really part of the Firefly family, and you think the girl gets away, but really, you know, Captain Spaulding you think is helping her, but then she gets in the car with them, and then Otis is in the back seat. So it ends really brutally, but again, just the whole movie itself just has so many weird elements to it that it's just very uncomfortable, very disturbing. But I do like this movie. And, you know, I mean, I don't know, it's a good horror movie. This one and Devil's Rejects, I like both of those a lot. Devil's Rejects, real quick about that one, that has the same kind of element as Hostel, in my opinion, where in the beginning you're like disgusted by all the violence and everything, but then you're like cheering the guy on when he goes after the family. So I don't know, I think it's like kind of neat to examine that part of us, I guess, like where violence ends versus where like vengeance begins, I guess. Anyway, but yeah, so I like Rob Zombie. I like this movie. I liked Devil's Rejects. Not a big fan of the other ones, unfortunately, but I did like this one. But again, it's just, I don't know. The first time I saw it, it was really disturbing. It kind of stuck with me the first time I saw it. All right, next up, Kids, 1995. This one follows a group of kids in New York as they skate, drink, party, and have sex. So what made this movie, at least to me, so disturbing is that you feel like you're watching a really inappropriate documentary the whole time. I mean, it just feels so real. So basically it follows, you know, the kids as they go through New York, and there's one kid in particular who his whole thing is that he only has sex with virgins. So it shows like an uncomfortable scene with him and this girl in the beginning, and then it goes to another girl that he had slept with, I don't know, like a few days ago or something. I don't remember the timeline. But anyway, her and this other girl are at a clinic where they're just going to be tested and, you know, maybe get birth control. And you can see they're being tested, or they're being questioned by a nurse simultaneously in different rooms. So the one girl has, when she's asked about her experience, what she's done, how many people she's been with, it's like, you know, she's pretty much done everything with multiple partners, did not practice safe sex. And then you have the other girl who had sex one time and she tests positive for HIV. The other girl doesn't, and this girl does. So we're following her as she tries to find Tully to let him know what's going on. and she winds up at this party at the end. She, gets drunk and passes out, and this guy Casper winds up sleeping with her while she's like passed out. And so then you're like, oh, like it's really uncomfortable to watch that scene anyway, but then you're like, great, now he's obviously going to get the virus too. And it ends basically with Casper waking up and being like, oh, what happened last night? And it's just so uncomfortable because it feels so realistic. You feel like you shouldn't be watching this. Kids is a weird movie where, and let me know if this is true for you or not, or maybe I'm just making this up, but I feel like everybody has seen Kids twice. Once when somebody shows it to you, and once when you show it to somebody else. But again, let me know if that's the same for you. All right, next up, 2009's Dogtooth. 3 siblings are locked away from the world by their controlling and manipulative parents. So this is a Greek foreign film, and the thing with foreign films, I feel like they're definitely able to get away with a lot more than American films. So for instance, there's a scene between the mother and father that they show a lot more than what they would be willing to show in America. So for me, I was like, what am I watching when I, saw this scene? The movie is just really, really weird. So again, all the kids are adults. They're like grown adults, but the parents have kept them secluded and they don't tell them true information. So for instance, and I'm just making this up, but I can't remember the words that they use, but like for instance, they would tell them the color blue means couch, or that zombie means toothbrush, or something like that. Like it's like really weird, like the language that they teach them. And the father tells them that they can only leave when they've lost their dog tooth. So again, it's like they're just making all this stuff up to keep the kids there, but they're like mentally messing with them so bad. Now, the father works at a real job outside of this like combine or whatever you want to call it that he keeps the family in, and he brings a coworker blindfolded to his location or to his house so that way his eldest son can sleep with her, because of course he can't have a grown son without letting him sleep with a woman, right? So anyway, but yeah, so he lets that happen, and the daughter, I guess, sort of not befriends the woman, but the woman brings them videotapes, and the daughter that's like her only window to the outside world. So I know Jaws is like a big one in this, and she'll repeat lines from the movie, but it builds curiosity within the older daughter's mind. So the daughter winds up pulling out her molar. So she thinks that she can escape from there, and she sneaks into her father's car, like the trunk, and he leaves one day with her in it. And I don't know, it's just such a weird movie, because then you think like, what is she going to do now? Like she knows nothing of the world, and God forbid her father, get her. So I don't know. I saw this movie a really long time ago, but I just remember watching it and it was just incredibly uncomfortable. It was just very, very bizarre. Very, very bizarre. So, all right, next up, 2008's Martyrs. Lucy, now an adult, seeks vengeance on the people who kidnapped and tortured her as a child. When she finally achieves her retribution, she calls on her friend Anna to come help her. So I can't necessarily say that I liked this one, but what I thought was interesting is that the whole idea of like torture, like there was a purpose behind it within the plot. So like, it wasn't like, for me, like with the Saw movies, I feel like that's more just like, how far can we push body horror and torture? And I don't know. I'm not a fan of that stuff. But for this, it was like, they pushed it far, but there was a reason within the plot. So basically when Anna comes to help Lucy, she finds that Lucy had actually killed an entire family. And she's like, oh my God, what's going on? She tries to help one of the survivors, and Lucy sees her and kills the survivor. So Lucy eventually, that night succumbs to her depression. She just can't take it anymore. And it's just Anna that's left. So the next day, Anna, she finds this woman. She goes downstairs to like this room, and she discovers that it is a torture chamber, that it wasn't this nice family that was there. It was this family that had just done awful things to Lucy as a child. And there's this one woman there, and she's got this like contraption over her face. It's like screwed into her head. Anna gets her, tries to help her. She gets that thing off, and it's just a whole big scene. It's really, again, just gross and uncomfortable to watch. But anyway, the people that have been doing this, not the family obviously, but other people show up and they take Anna and take her prisoner. So a woman known as Mademoiselle shows up and tells Anna that she's basically a part of this group, which is a cult. I mean, there's really no other way to say it, that their whole goal is to find out what happens after we die. The way that they can do this is by putting a person through unbelievable torture, and at that point they will go into a state that allows them to see beyond this realm, thereby achieving martyrdom. So for me, I really was not a fan of how this movie ended. So you have Anna, who's gone through all this torture. Ultimately, she's filleted and set in front of a heater or light of some kind. And then the woman who's the head of this new family comes downstairs to check on her, and she sees that she is in this altered state and she's officially a martyr. So she calls Mademoiselle to rush over there. Mademoiselle comes over and Anna is in this bath, basically keeping her alive and comfortable, I guess, if you can be comfortable in that state. And Mademoiselle leans in so that Anna can whisper to her what it is that she saw. They have everybody come meet at the house, everybody that's in this cult. They pay, like respect to Anna and what she went through. So it's really weird because it's like you see they respect her. They wish she didn't have to go through all this pain, but to them, they think it's for the greater good. So this man goes upstairs and checks on Mademoiselle. She's in the bathroom. She's taking off her makeup, and he asks her through the door, did she hear Anna clearly? And she says, yeah, I heard exactly what she said. And he said, and you understood her? And she was like, absolutely. There is no mistake. I know exactly what she said. Then she asks him if he can imagine what happens after death. And he says no. And she says, keep doubting. And then she kills herself. So that's it. You never find out what Anna saw. You never find out, what happens. I don't like ambiguous endings like this, especially when there was so much intense stuff happening. I mean, it was really brutal things. And then to just have it left like, okay, so what does that mean? I don't know. I didn't like that. I want to have like full circle. We know exactly what's going on. Nothing's left up to the imagination here. I did not like that. I felt like it was kind of disrespectful to the audience, honestly. And I've looked up things like, what's the meaning in the movie, the ending explained of this movie, all that stuff. And everybody's got kind of something different to say. Some people say that, she found out that there was nothing, but then they're like, well, then why would she kill herself if there was nothing there? Why would she ultimately just go into nothingness? Then other people said it could have been hell, but again, why would she willingly go into hell? So I just don't think it really made a lot of sense. And I think with a movie like that, you should have it come full circle so that the audience understands why they were just put through all this as far as watching this woman go through these things. So that's my opinion. All right, and finally, The Last House on the Left, 1972. Two teenage girls stop to get marijuana on their way to a rock concert, but instead are kidnapped and tortured by a group of psychopaths. So when I was younger, me and a friend of mine used to, every Sunday, it would be like our hangover Sunday, and we would just go to Blockbuster, yes, Blockbuster, and we would rent a movie and just relax and enjoy a Sunday of just laziness, right? So we saw this movie and we read that it was Wes Craven's first movie, and we were like, awesome, let's watch this one. We were not prepared for what we were about to see. It was like watching a snuff film. It took us 3 times to get through it. One time we were watching it, like when we first turned it on, and my parents walked in and we were just like, just had to turn it off. It was just too uncomfortable. It's not one of those movies that you can watch with your parents around. So then, again, it took us a couple times. We finally got through it. So the whole thing is this group of crazy people kidnap these girls. They take them out into the woods, and it's just this awful scene. It's so uncomfortable, and it's really hard to get through. And then the people, once they've killed the girls, they're like, we need a place to hide out for a little bit. So they change their clothes and they walk down, and they wind up at, you guessed it, the last house on the left, which turns out to be the parents of one of the girls that they just murdered. So the parents notice that, like, they let them in, they're really, really welcoming, and they just start noticing really weird things. And they notice that one of the guys is wearing their daughter's necklace. Then they find these bloody clothes in their bags, and then they overhear them talking about murdering their daughter. So they go into the woods and they find their daughter. So they decide that they need to get vengeance. So they do all these crazy things to the people that, you know, had killed their daughter. And it's like one violent thing after another. So I saw an interview with the guy. Again, this was on 100 Scariest Movie Moments, where the guy that played the leader, Krug, and yes, it's like Krug and Kruger because both are Wes Craven. So anyway, but yeah, so I saw an interview with him, and he said that the whole point of the movie was it was a movie showing how bad violence is. It was an anti-violence movie, and how do you do that but by pushing things as far as you can and showing how awful violence is. So throughout the entire movie, it's really crazy because it's like this banjo playing music. It's just a really strange movie. It's uncomfortable all around. You have these violent things, but then with music that's like Willie Nelson playing. I mean, it's just a very strange movie. So Martin Kove, who plays John Kreese in Karate Kid and Cobra Kai, is also in this. He plays like a dim-witted sheriff. So the whole thing was just, it's sort of jarring because definitely I'm used to seeing him played a very controlled, badass type in Karate Kid, but then seeing him in this. So I think the whole movie itself, especially when you're not prepared for it, is very, very jarring. Now, they came out with a 2009 remake of it. I call it the Disney version. It's not on any kind of level as far as the original goes. But I can't recommend this movie because it's just so unnerving. It's so uncomfortable. But at the same time, it's Wes Craven's first one. So if you haven't seen it and you're a horror fan, you kind of have to. But again, I don't think I'd recommend anything on this list. So there you have it, 10 of the most disturbing movies I've been able to sit through. Let me know how many on this list you've watched, and of this list, which one do you think is the most disturbing? Definitely let me know in the comments, and if you like this video, please be sure you give it a big thumbs up. As always, thank you so much for watching, and be on the lookout for more movie rec videos. Bye.